Welcome to A Righteous Woman. My name is Saini and I am your host, and alongside me are our beautiful panelists. Every week, we set a challenge for you viewers to take up. Last week, we asked you to set some quiet time so that you can speak to God and share with Him your trials and your daily triumphs. So we'd love to hear from you. Please comment below on how you went with that challenge. As you can see, we have two new beautiful faces who are on the panel today, and very soon I will have the pleasure of introducing them. But first, as you may know, April is Autism Awareness Month, so we thought it was appropriate to wrap up the month by having this episode where we will acknowledge those who have autism and also people who have family members with autism or ASD, otherwise known as Autism Spectrum Disorder. I would like to introduce Audrey. Audrey, could you please wave? Let everyone know who you are. There we go. So Audrey is a proud Polynesian lady from Hamilton, New Zealand. She is a wife and a mother of 4 beautiful young boys, 2 of whom have autism, and she is currently pregnant with baby number 5. As you can see, that pregnant glow is right there. Is passionate about the advancement of Polynesian people's thinking and living their dream life. She is here to share her experiences about having children with autism. Second, we have Therese, who is right there in the yellow. Therese, could you please wave? There we go. Therese is a mother and a wife. She has 7 children. Her son, who is now 27, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. This drove her to have a desire to know more about autism, so she returned back to school to study. Today, she is a psychologist, and she is here not only to share her experiences, but to share some stats and facts with us about autism. So that is our panel today. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to ask Audrey. Audrey, could you share your feelings when you first found out that your child or your children have autism?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm already feeling quite emotional. I'm an emotional woman, normally, but being pregnant, it's also heightened. So, and I might get out of breath. So just putting those disclaimers out there, bear with me. But I've always been a woman of faith. So I've always believed in a higher power, and I've always had this strong connection to intuition, right? And to what I feel comes from my higher power. And so I noticed that my son began to regress in his development at around 18 months old. He was my second son, so having already had a child previous and having him hit the normal milestones in development, and then also having a nephew with Asperger's or ASD as well, and noticing his behaviours, I kind of was in a bit of disbelief. I knew before I even got the diagnosis that he had some special challenges going on, and I remember one night lying in bed and Googling what the signs of autism or the symptoms of autism or whatever it is. And I remember going down the list, and I just had this very strong, heavy, not heavy in a bad way, but this very strong, definite feeling of, that's my son. It was describing my son. And so I did the normal things and got him his appointments and assessments. And although I felt peace the whole time, it's a whole new experience. And when I did finally get the diagnosis, I remember calling my husband, crying. And I felt like I was mourning a life that he would never have. Mm-hmm. I mourned for the next 20 years of his life of, for us and what our family does. You know, he'll never be able to serve a mission for our church, or maybe he'll never get married, and all those different things. You know, I had this moment of just sadness for what I thought was going to be a good life for him, you know, or the life that I thought he was going to have. And then I gathered myself together, while my husband helped me gather myself together, and I just thought, this is us, and this is good. And it's really hard, but it's really beautiful too. Sorry.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask the same question to Therese. How did you feel when you first found out that your son had autism or has
Uh,
autism?
So I was a young mum, so he was only a wee fella, and 24 years ago when he got diagnosed, it wasn't that common for wee fellas to be diagnosed. Usually you had to go to school before they recognise and they acknowledge that sort of stuff. But he was different. He was different his whole entire 3 years of life at the time. He was an awesome baby. You put him down and he didn't cry, and I'd be like, wow. So I had him and his older brother, and there's only 13 months between them, and I didn't recognize the difference. It was my mother-in-law who recognized the difference, and she supported me in a Plunkett visit one time, and I was like, oh no, everything's good, and she was like, no babe, they're not. He's not doing the things that normal, other kids his age would be doing. I was like, oh, I didn't even notice. So we went to a kindy to enroll my older son, and it was a Christian kindy, and the lady there, because we had our son with us, we had both of them, and she said, oh, you should enroll that one. I said, oh, he's different. We were waiting for a hearing test because they thought that he had hearing issues. I never thought so, because he could hear chocolate being opened at the other end of the house and he would come running. So, there was nothing wrong with that boy's hearing, but that was what they told us, and so we didn't know what it was. So when she said to me, I think he's got autism, I was like, well, that's fantastic. What is that? Had no idea. I had no idea. And so we started our journey with our boy, and he got his diagnosis, and he stayed with that kindy, and that kindy was so supportive. And like Audrey, I too believe in a higher power, and I think that we were guided and directed to be where we needed to be at the right time, so that we were able to be helped and supported for our boy. Oh, look, Audrey, you've made me start too. But we are grateful for, we were grateful to find out what it was, and I knew as a mother, I was thinking, thank goodness it's not me. It's not me. I didn't do anything wrong. There is a reason for my son being the way that he is. And of course, being so young and naive, I was like, woohoo, what is that? And so we've learned along the way. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. You kind of hit some points there in regards to development. For myself, this topic is very new to me, because my oldest son, I thought everything was okay until we had a second child, and then our second child was hitting all the milestones, and then I thought, wait, Ephraim, who is my oldest, didn't hit it at that age, or something started clicking in my head that Ephraim was a little bit different. And I think I'm like Audrey, my son hasn't been diagnosed, but I know, like as a mom, you just know. And I know something's different. And I think just having that gut feeling, how would you help someone who's feeling this way about their child, or that they just know, even though their child hasn't been diagnosed, but they just have this feeling that something's different. And a lot of people label children as naughty, right? Oh, your child's so naughty, can't you do something about your child? But in reality, they have autism. But people, especially us islanders, we just don't understand, So today's episode, I just want people to be educated on autism. So what are some things you could tell parents who just have a gut feeling that their child is different?
I think so I didn't have that feeling. It was my mother-in-law, and she's a nurse. So my mother, and I married a Samoan, so I'm Māori, but my husband's Samoan. And she was such a wonderful support, both her and my father-in-law. And so she said, no, he's different. And so that was the pathway that we took. And so we Um, you should always go see your GP first if you have concerns, and you should say, look, things are a little bit different, because they're your primary healthcare provider. And then they should be able to make a referral to the right people that are going to put you on the right pathway. But one of the things that I learned in my journey with in my work is that if you think that this is something that your child has, then it doesn't change the way that you mother this child. These babies are still our babies, and they're beautiful babies. They may be just a little bit more fun than some of the other fellas that you have to hang out with. But they make life different and exciting, although sometimes it may take 20 years for you to realize how exciting that was. At the time, it's not so exciting, but you do get to catch up and notice the difference. And I like how you said difference. Autism stands for, like you said, autism spectrum disorder. I don't like that word disorder. I prefer difference, and difference doesn't have to be a bad thing. Difference is just different. So they do things differently. And when you talked about the naughty kid, our kids don't understand the impact of their actions on other people.
Yeah.
They don't purposely go and break things just to annoy people. They don't go and make lots of noise in church just to annoy people. I was telling Sandy last night that when we would go to church, my son was 3, and he would sing, "I want to sex you up" in the middle of, our meeting. He didn't have much language, but that he could sing. And I used to sit there thinking, oh, of all the places in the world. And so sometimes people
Wouldn't he clap
oh,
when someone would say a long as prayer, and
oh my
finally
goodness.
say amen?
So even as an adult, my son, when he comes to church, and I'm talking like the last couple of years, one of the uncles was speaking in church, and he was speaking a little bit longer. And some of you might know Uncle James Amu. And so he was speaking, and then I guess my son thought it was a little bit too long, and he goes, "In the name of Jesus Christ, amen." And then he started clapping. So he does lots of wonderful things like that in the middle of church. And we've been blessed with wonderful people around us that have just said, just come to church. There's a lot of people that have probably looked differently and thought differently and have said things about our boy as he's growing up. But one of the things I love and appreciate about my son is that he has taught so many more people than I have ever done. And he's taught people to be patient. He's probably taught people to stop judging. I've had many people say to me, he's so naughty. And I sometimes I have the strength to be able to say he doesn't know any better. He's not trying to be naughty. He's just trying to let me know that it's time to go, or he's hungry, always hungry usually, or something else. Our kids with autism don't always have good communication skills. And so they do know what moves people. And if that moves people to get out of sacrament by singing "I want to sex you up," then that's what happens. So, so that's
I just want to add something about the language or the verbiage we use around autism, and something that I've, on our small journey, because it's still small, we're still brand new, but I have 3 other sons, 2 other sons that don't have autism. And there's so many different things we call, it's special needs, or they're naughty or whatever, but my other sons are just as special, even though they don't take up, my son with autism takes up a lot of time, a lot of attention, a lot of energy, a lot of anxiety, a lot, and it's not just on my husband and myself, it falls on my other children, especially my oldest son. So he feels the anxiety too, when it's like, where's Ike? We always have to know where he is. We literally can't breathe at night until nighttime, when he's asleep and not moving or going anywhere, or when he's at school, and then we can be like, okay, we can relax, like all of us can relax, even my 7-year-old. And it's a lot, and so I try to be careful with how we talk about it around my other children and what we say, because sometimes it can take away from the other children that you have, and I don't want to create resentment. Maybe that will happen anyway, but I also want my son to feel responsible for his brother too. You know, this is what we do. We look after each other. We look after our brothers and we protect them. But also wanting him to make sure he knows he's special as well, you know.
Just on that, my oldest son, so we knew that when we knew that Jamin had autism, and we usually call our children these days children with autism rather than they're autistic. But my son used to, we would say he was autistic. My oldest would always say, so Jamin is autistic, mum, but I'm half-tistic, right? And I'm like, yeah, bro, you are so half-tistic. That was a term that we used to use in the house all the time, is, mate, you have been so half-tistic right now. So I think you've got to make it funny somewhere along the way, and not like a mocking way, because otherwise you just might go a bit nutty, even though I think I'm a little bit nutty anyway. But my other kids would probably say that's just you, mum. But it was really nice that you were talking about your kids. So Jamin's number 2 for us of 7. So we have 5 other children after him, and my girls are they're the no rubbish girls. They're not going to take your rubbish. They're not going to take their brother's rubbish. And so they haven't taken his rubbish over the years. And I felt sorry for my poor baby, because he had to deal with these women. But they love their brother. They truly love their brother. They haven't always, because he's not always been a nice brother. He's hurt them, but they forgive him immediately, and they just get on with it. But I used to moan to my husband about how horrible my girls were to their brother, and he would go, no, I love my girls because they keep it real. They keep it real like any sister would to their older brother. And I'm like, do they have to be so real though? But they just do their thing, and they're all older now, and they love their brother. I'm grateful for that.
I just have a question for you ladies. When your child was or children were diagnosed with autism, did you have a time where you had to sit down with your family, like especially with your children, and really have a conversation about what to expect? And because I know for myself, my daughter, she was when she was okay before she was diagnosed with cancer, and then like you, I don't like the word special needs. She's special needs now. I like that word different. And we actually had to sit down and, I chose sit down with my family and explain to them, that she's not the same as before. That makes any sense. And it's as she's gotten older, she's 22 now, almost 23. I find that she's different. You know what I'm saying? Like she's growing up, and she's going through different stages. But did you guys have to ever do that? Sit down with your families and really have a conversation with them and answer whatever questions they had.
Do you want to go first, Audrey, or?
You go, Auntie.
Yeah, anybody.
Not when the boys were little, because I had no idea what it is, so I was still learning on my journey. I know I sat with my mum and my mother and father, and I said, "Oh, Mum and Dad, he's got autism," and they were like me. They're like, "Oh, it's nice, dear," and I was like, "Oh." None of us knew what that was, so we all learned. And I guess as our kids came along, that was just their brother. There was no knowledge of before. They came after he did, so that was just their life, and that was just how they knew him to be. I didn't even know today if my kids actually know what the definition of autism is, other than this is their brother and they know their brother. So I think that but I tell you what, my kids have got ASD radar, like something wonderful. They can be at a park and they're like, "Mum." And I'm like, "Yes, probably, dear." But I keep telling them, don't be diagnosing people, dear. We don't know what's going on. But they can see it, and they are very empathetic to it when they see it. And I think that they have been wonderful. But my brother, I have an older brother who has never really understood, and he still asks really I don't want to say dumb questions, but those questions. And I'm kind of like, yep, he does those things, but he is ours, and we just love him. So yeah.
We were quite fortunate that well, fortunately, but unfortunately, how I see it now is that my nephew, who's now 9 years old, he was diagnosed before my son. And so we had some exposure to the behavior. But unfortunately, this is something I always feel a bit sad about, is that I didn't understand him when he was displaying those behaviors, and we all just thought he was naughty.
Mm.
And so, in a sense, he paved the way for people to be more understanding to my son, and for the family to be more understanding to my son. And so now my greatest, what I always want to be is just understanding to all different behaviors, because, you know, I looked at my nephew differently then. I just thought he was naughty. And so my family already had some exposure, and my son was a bit more extreme in his behaviors, and so they could see. And I'm really blessed with an amazing family on both sides, my husband and my side. So everyone was just naturally supportive, very protective. And you know, so, you know, things like this happen. My son constantly takes his clothes off. He's always got his clothes off. He's always naked, and he's 6 years old now, you know. And Jamin's what, 25, and I don't think that stopped.
27. So, no, it did stop. It did stop when he went to school, but you know, there's so many kids that have been, like, you know, like many houses in the community. The house was a bit of a community house, and all the friends would come over. There are so many children out there that have seen my boy's bits, and they probably shouldn't have, and they got used to going like this whenever he would walk past, because he would come out of the shower naked and walk up the hallway, and I'd be like, oh, and then it'll be like, Damon, and so they would literally just put their hands where it needed to be, so that they didn't have to see what they didn't need to see.
Yeah. Well, like, we were at the park a few weeks ago, and my son just took his clothes off at the park, and there's lots of kids there, you know, and my other son was like, Mom, Mikey's taking his clothes off, and everyone knows that he's running around naked. And, you know, so I've developed a bit of not caring what other people think.
Yeah.
Because they don't know my son's running around with the disco inside of his head, not knowing what to do, you know, lots of sensory things going on. And so, you know, although we don't like it, it's something that's just how it is, you know. Or I'll share with you another quirky thing, right? And this is, so my son will come and just sniff my armpit, sniff it, just sit there and go. And, you know, and so when I was at the intervention centre where we go for him, it's not an uncommon thing. You know, lots of kids, they have so sensory issues. They're smelling, they're hearing, they're tasting. So my 2-year-old, my mum has 2 Himalayan salt lamps here. He's constantly climbing on top of the unit where they are and putting his mouth on it and licking the salt. Like, no matter how many times we get him down and stop him, he goes to it like 17 times a day. So just, there's lots of funny, interesting, weird, crazy, aggressive things that happen. And that's why autism is a spectrum, because not everyone is the same. Just because you've met one person with autism means you've met one person with autism. You know, they've got all different things going on with them. But let me just tell you, it's like Auntie Therese said, you got to learn to laugh at some things too, otherwise you certainly will go crazy. You know, I'm talking like, my son was 2, he would take his nappy off after he had done a number 2 and smear it all across the wall or whatever there was, you know, multiple times a day. Multiple times a day.
Thank you for that, because it's like you said, my children have become really, really protective of their sister, even now. And I mean, it sounds sad, but it's like we have to pick our times when to take her to, you know, how our church have young YSA dances and activities, because of just the way that she can come off to people. And also I went through the phase of guilt for my older kids, because I felt like, I don't know, it's just really hard to explain, but it just felt like they didn't have that youth, but they love their sister. Like you said, you know, I was going through the phase of feeling guilty for them, because I'm asking a lot of them to help their sister. and it's just the norms now. Like you said, it's just the norms now in our home. Yeah. Thank you for that.
I heard, how do you explain autism, you know, like a definition? So if you had someone that was complaining that your child's naughty, how do you quickly explain to them about autism then and there? How do you educate them?
That's a really good question. So I looked up the definition just so that we can get that out of the way. So autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects cognitive, so that's your thinking, sensory, the sight, sound, smells, all of that sort of stuff that goes along with your senses. There's two more, there's actually 7 senses. Social processing, and changing the world, changing the world people see, changing the way people see the world and interaction with others. Now, that's the textbook definition off of the Autism New Zealand website. I think when I talk about it, I always say it's a neurological difference. So it's not something that they could control or that we could control. It is something that they are born with, and it is something that interrupts their brain development, whether it usually in utero, so when they're still babies. And so I like to say that because it's a brain thing, it's a brain issue. So it just impacts, they just see things differently, they think differently, and the way that they smell it, see it, breathe it, all the rest of it can really have a huge impact on the way that they behave. So like Ike likes to take his clothes off, Jamin still likes to take his clothes off. He can be reminded now to put them back on again. But there's just a freeing sense of not having those restrictions, I think. And I think a lot of times we are called neurotypicals because we don't have autism. So neurotypical, so we're neurotypically developed. I know that we always try to maybe put meaning to some of the stuff that we see, or try and explain it in our own way. But and I used to think when my boy was younger, and sometimes still now, I used to think, what are you thinking? I would love to just jump inside there. But then I think, actually, I don't want anyone jumping inside my head. So you're Kato Pai boy, you just do what you got to do, and it's okay. I just think that I think we're blessed to have difference in our world so that we can be different and support differently, and just support others to see things differently. So it's not just my children that have grown up with their brother. All of their cousins have grown up with their brother. And so now when they're in the world and they see some difference, and they all know. And it's funny, I was just talking to my niece and she was going, oh, what do you think about that one, Auntie? He kind of has that Jamin look about them. And I went, but even they can see it, and they've grown up with their cousin, and so they then have that gift and ability to pass that on to other people about, yeah, I see that kid's a little bit different, but maybe he's not naughty, maybe we need to just give them some time, and maybe there's something else going on. So and it's the same with people at church. So that the circle that is us, or the teardrop that is us, is actually spread far and wide for a lot of different people. And I think the cool thing about that is that you can influence different people by the way that you talk about it and you react to it, and that you support them to react and talk about it.
I absolutely love that. And I love that you've touched on that, because something that I am eternally grateful that I have learnt in this process is that, to me, there's no such thing as normal. I'm not even normal. I'm flipping quirky. My sister has, autistic traits. My husband does. Like, we are all weird and wonderful. I really don't believe in normal anymore. I believe that we're all uniquely different, blessed with different abilities, and it's powerful. It's a powerful force to have unique abilities, and we are each blessed with that, and that's what I love that I have learned. And it takes away judgment. It takes away judgment from judging other people, and I think we need that more. And maybe that's what I needed to learn as well, is just strip myself of judging other people, because we have absolutely no idea what they're going through. Absolutely no idea, what they're going through. And so it's helped me in my own spiritual journey to be like, wow, let me look at these people differently, because there's something going on here, or I see, you know, mothers in the supermarket, just as a mother anyway, of kids that have different abilities. And I remember going to the chemist, and there was this big, huge boy, and he was clearly had autism and lots of other issues, but he was huge, you know, so quite intimidating. And he was starting to act kind of physical or aggressive. And his mum was tiny, sitting next to him. And I just went up to her and I said, "Hi, hi, how are you guys?" You know, talking to the son like he could actually understand me, or like he, you know, having a normal conversation. And the mum just said to me, "Wow, thank you for coming and talking to us. No one ever comes to talk to us. Everyone's always too intimidated or afraid. You know, thank you for that." And that, to me, as hard as all this life is for me, there's gems like that that just make it all worthwhile. And I want to share something really special about Therese. So Therese and my husband and her husband go way back, like way back, because they're all way older than me.
Thank you.
My husband's 15 years older than me, so they're like way back. They all went to school together, and I remember my husband coming back every, you know, a couple of times a year. He'd say, "Oh, I saw my friend Mangan at the temple, and you know, they've got a son with autism," and he was just like sharing with me some stuff, and that was always really cool for my husband. But then when I connected with Therese, they made special time to come and be with us, and we got to spend a little bit of time with them up in their home too. And there's something about connecting woman to woman, mother to mother, with someone who knows what you're going through, who's been there before and done that, you know. So I've always looked to this woman as like a pillar of strength for me and understanding. She was just so no judgment about anything and so patient. And I've taken that. And on my journey, I've met other young mums with children with autism who still look like they're a deer with headlights, because they just, and I know that feeling. And so I've been able to take what Therese has taught me and what she's shown me and given me by example, and share that with other mothers. And there's something beautiful about helping another mother to feel relaxed and be like, "It's okay. You can relax. I know exactly what you're going through, you know, like, let your child run loose in my house, because this is how it is in our house." You know, like, you can't go many places with our kids. You just can't. They'll either freak out, or, you know, they'll freak out. They'll freak out, or they'll hurt people, not intentionally, but that's just a result of their behavior and their neurotypical stuff that's going on. So it can be quite isolating. You can feel very alone. And there's nothing better than being with people who can help you relax and feel like it's okay and they love your child just as your child is.
You're too kind, Audrey, but that is exactly our role, is that, you know, as women, is to support one another to be in who we are gonna be. You know, we have special relationships with our Heavenly Father, our God, and you know, we it's a privilege to be able to share the life that we've had and the experiences that we've had with other people. And just sitting in this panel here, you know, Audrey and I have now touched 5 other people that can then share that knowledge about difference and understanding around that sort of stuff. And from there, it goes on and on and on and on. So, you know, I'm grateful to have any opportunity to talk about autism. It's definitely a passion of mine, but I'm grateful to talk to people about, you know, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. It's just a difference.
Thank you for sharing both your experiences. I know for myself, and probably for every other mom, going through something, if I'm going through something, it's hard. But if my child is going through it, it's harder. It's harder as a parent, and you just wish that to take away their pain, take away their sorrows. And so I want to ask, have you gone through an experience where your child was probably acting differently and there was a person who showed compassion and showed love towards you that may have helped you, or an answer to your prayer?
When we moved, like at church in Auckland, lovely people, and you know, our main minister would always tell us to bring him to church, and so, you know, we tried to take him out one time. He said, "Don't ever do that again, you should always bring him." But when we moved to Whangarei, so I love the people in Auckland, but when we moved to Whangarei, there was a family that went to the same church as us, and they lived across the road from us for a while. And they did something that no one had ever done, and it is the most, and they don't even know, but it was the most valuable and biggest gift that we were ever given. And they just invited us to dinner, all of us to dinner. And at the time I think we only had 5 children, but they invited all of us to dinner. And I said, look, I'm really sorry, my son, he's a wrecker, he might break some of your stuff, he might hurt your children. And these people, these beautiful people, said, just come for dinner, we're just asking you to come for dinner. And that was the beginning of I guess the melting of the isolation that we felt as parents. Is that even though I knew some stuff and I learned some stuff, and even though we were learning along the way and we had some great people around us, no one actually knows what it's like, or knew what it was like for us, except for my husband and I. And to just be invited to dinner and then have my son run around their house naked and jump in their pool naked and then jump out of their pool, and all, he loved that place because they had a pool. But for him to do all of those things, and they didn't growl him and they didn't judge him, and I just felt so comfortable. That was the best gift that we as a family had ever received. And from that time onwards, I felt less nervous about going to places, and less afraid or frightened or worried about the judgment that would come, because they just opened up their home and their hearts. And so even for those people, we are still very good friends, and they always ask about our boy. But they know they were on the journey with us, and they could see how hard it was, but they just loved us, and they loved him, and they loved my children. And that is the most precious thing that you can do for any family who has a child with autism, is just acceptance. Because I think, like you were saying, Irene, is that you tend to think what other people are going to think before you've even done something, or before you've even gone somewhere. You are always thinking, oh my goodness, what are they going to say, what are they going to do? And that might make you not do what you're going to do. You always have that. Your own mind can be the worst enemy for yourself, and you think about, what if he does this and what if he does that. After that invitation and many more invitations that came, I stopped thinking what other people were going to think about my boy, and I stopped worrying about the things that he would do. If he broke something, we'd fix it, or we'd pay for it, or we'd offer to pay for it. And I didn't worry that people didn't love us because of what my son did. I then just accepted that, what, this is a gift, and this is an opportunity for us to just be, and we wouldn't stay too long because we whatever. But people around you can be the most beautiful people and the biggest influences for change, and not because you ask them to, and not because you expect it from them. They just are. And so it was people that weren't related to us that became closer whānau with us because of the things that they did. And I think sometimes within your family, the biggest and deepest wounds that you can suffer are the ones that come from family, because you have different expectations. But they don't understand, they don't get it, and that's cool. Everybody's on their own journey, and it took years before my sisters and even my dad and everybody to jump on the waka, but they all got there in the end.
How can we support friends, family members that are going through this, that may have just found out and that are struggling and even been in isolation with their children? How can we support them?
Invite them for dinner.
Yeah.
Well, not in isolation.
After.
Not in isolation. What? You could still do dinner through something like this. I mean, you let the kids run around behind them. I think I'm grateful for the husband that I have, because I really did marry well, and we support each other. I mean, there are plenty of times when we could have walked away and found other things to do and found other people to be with, but my husband is amazing. He's an amazing man, and he, without him, I don't think we could have done what we did. I don't know if he would say the same thing, but I would hope that he would say the same thing. But he and I never really disclosed to everybody just how difficult our life was. I think his mum and dad knew because we lived with them, but even then they didn't really know. We were really good at hiding stuff. So even when people say, "No, I'm good," they're not good. And just inviting them to do something simple like after lockdown, shall we go for a walk, or shall we have a Milo, or shall we just go to Macca's and have a hot chocolate on one evening when you've got somebody to look after the kids? Having some normal time, or a friend of mine used to call them real life moments. Having some real life moments are really, really cool. And real life people have dinner with friends. Real life people get to you know, go out and do stuff. And real life people don't isolate themselves because they're worried about what other people say. So my advice would be, you don't have to be the person for them, but you could be a person that could help that along the way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes it might take a bit of persistence. I'm the type of person that, and my husband, we don't really like people to see our struggle. You know, like our life is messy. It's a hot mess. And even with our bestest friends, you know, you don't want to expose them to what it really is like. Like it's messy, it's ugly, it's tears, it's literally dirty, you know. But sometimes it takes, if it's someone you really love, you know, someone you really care about, you'll be persistent and just be like, no, just come over, or nah, let me come over, you know, because for us it's like, oh no, we're fine, it's all good. Or we just won't turn up to activities, or we'll say no to invites out because we just want to save the drama, you know. And it's the drama for ourselves, and maybe the drama for them of, oh, what if our kid breaks something or hurts their kid, because it's happened before. We've gone places and that's happened to us, and we hate it. We don't want that to happen, and we don't, you know, you don't want to put other people in that position either. But if it's someone you really love, you'll be persistent and just like, no, just come over, it's all good, please don't worry about it. I'll share a quick experience. My husband was one of the ministers in our church, and we had a special authority come visit for sacrament meeting. So my husband sits up at the top and I'm sitting down the bottom with the kids. And I've got a newborn at the time, and so my son with autism is running up and down, and he's running up to where his dad is, and you know, I had to take him out. And you know, my husband's giving me the look from the thing, like, you know, what are we gonna do? Gonna like keep it quiet here, keep it, you know, we want to keep it nice and spiritual here. You need to do something. And after the meeting was done, this kind brother and quite an authority in our church, he came up to my husband and he said, and this was really great for my husband, because men, if this was a panel of men, this discussion would be very different. Okay, men handle this very differently. They're not as free coming as women are to discuss this. But so this was really, I appreciated this experience with my husband. And he said to him, he said, you don't ever take him out of this meeting. He is never exempt from this meeting. If people have a problem with the noises that he makes or whatever he's doing, that's their problem. They can leave, but you never ever take him out ever again. You know, and so you imagine if your husband was to hear something like that's very powerful, right? To have that understanding, because my husband, you know, he doesn't want to upset anyone, or, you know, don't want to take away from the meeting. So that was huge for us to know that, yeah, he deserves, he even said to him, he deserves to be here just as much as everyone else deserves to be here. And so if they have a problem with what he's doing or the noises that he makes, that's their problem. Do not take him out. And that's been a really special experience for us to have that under our belt, to know that, okay, it's okay. But we still take him out because it's still crazy.
I just want to say how much I appreciated this. I don't have children, so it was interesting listening to this, because what came to my mind is, so I'm a teacher and I'm a dean, and I have a student with autism in my year level. And I just kept thinking how, like, I wasn't sure what message I was going to receive as both these amazing sisters were speaking about it. And what I got was like exactly what I felt from what you both shared and all the experiences you shared, was that I need to do better in my ministry to that student in my year level. I thought about assembly earlier this year. I didn't know he had that student had autism, and we had an assembly, and I was standing up and I was talking to the year level, and someone was making noises, and I said, "Who's making noises like that?" And no one said anything. Everyone just went completely quiet. And then I felt like such an idiot afterwards when one of the other teachers came up to me and said, "Hey, the noise was probably the student, and that student has autism." And that's why I've really appreciated these experiences, because it's really like helped me understand that I have more work to do in that area, and that I shouldn't be scared. Because I think as a teacher, I think that's something for the teachers that are specialized to deal with things like that. That's not, I can't do anything about that, but you both just gave me courage to do something about it. And so thank you.
Oh, good luck, Fossey. I love that. I love hearing that. No, because I don't think either Audrey or I actually had degrees in autism before we started having children with autism. And I think it's definitely something that you learn along the way. And I work at the Ministry of Education, so I have heard teachers say stuff like that, and nothing on you, Fossey. And I'm kind of like, actually, it's a learn as you go thing. Like with any kid, you know, you've got kids that would have different needs and different abilities. It's a learn as you go thing, and that everybody can make a contribution and everybody can make a difference. But don't feel like you've done anything bad. I think it's cool that you've been able to reflect and say, oh, there's heaps more I can do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But also don't feel bad for saying, who's making those noises? I love that the kids didn't say, it's him, miss. I love that. But you know, don't change what you do. I think the best advice that I never took was that I should have raised my son like I would any other kid, and I didn't. He was my special boy, and he was my baby, and I still call him my baby at 27. And I wish that I had have done more things for him the same that I did with my other children, but I didn't, and for whatever reason. But don't change things just because they have difference. Just maybe have a support him with other things that he can do. Boy, if you want to make these noises, maybe you could sing them in your head or sing them in your mouth or whatever it might be. Just give him other ways of doing what it is that he needs to do.
No, yeah, I think that's really cool too, Fossey. And I think from here, you probably won't even be able to realize, just coming away from this with a bit more information, the difference and impact you will make on that student and other future students that come into your life. Because people who aren't exposed to anything to do with autism, they'll continue to, treat people in a certain way. And so I feel your passion already for what you do as a teacher, and so what you're going to do from here is going to be immeasurable. The effects, just by having that bit of understanding around autism, it's going to be amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for sharing. It just made me think of not the actual kids who do have autism, but you touched base on a few of the things, but even the family members that are not affected, but let's just say who do go through who see it firsthand. And I actually have a friend who has a kid who has autism, and a few times she's reached out to me, hey, let's hang out, let's chill, I'm free this time. And a lot of the times I've always like, oh, I'm busy, I've got something on. But then just hearing your stories and understanding that not everybody understands what goes behind closed doors, like, encouraged me to actually want to reach out to her and be like, hey, once lockdown's done, I'm gonna wipe off everything on my to-do list and then make you a priority to hang out with you. Because I feel like that's me helping her. Sometimes maybe she feels that she's wanting to hang out with her friends, but she can't do a lot of those things, like have some me time, because she's always with her kid. But yeah, thank you for encouraging me there and helping me like process that thought as well. And then also just wanting to better educate not only my friends but also my daughter. I have a child who's 5, but like, you know, I would hope that when she gets older that she'll be able to treat everybody the same and not look at them any different. And like when that time comes, when she does ask those questions, at least I'll have a better understanding of how I could respond to her just from your experiences and what you've shared with me. But thank you so much for jumping on board and, you know, educating me myself on autism. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Beautiful. You're welcome. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention something real quick. Sorry, Sani. You know, obviously the topic of what we've been talking about is autism, and I realized too that you may have heard me talk about how hard it is, and it's super hard. But I don't ever want to take away either from the fact that motherhood is hard, just in general. You know, this is just our specific challenge, but every single child and parent has their own specific set of struggles and challenges. You know, we all have something difficult that we're struggling with. Just so happens that today we're talking about autism and you've been able to hear how hard it is, but I'm sure each of you in your individual lives, whether you're a mother or not, have something hard that you're struggling with as well. And we all use the same power to be able to get through it, right? We use whatever faith it is that we believe in, the strength that we find from different resources to really push through.
Sort of to that.
Thank you, ladies. I too, like Gladys and Ossie, am learning quite a lot. And I know, Therese, when we spoke last night, we not only talked about children who have autism, but adults, and that there are quite a number of adults who are undiagnosed with autism. Could you please touch on that?
There are many adults that haven't actually been diagnosed with autism, and so they've gone through their life knowing that they were different. Their whānau knew that they were different, but without an explanation as to why that might be. There's a woman, a New Zealand woman, who's done a lot of writing. She's her name is, oh god, it's fallen out of my head. Anyway, she's done a lot of writing about her experience, and she didn't get diagnosed until she was almost 60, I think. And so her entire life, she knew she was different, and she was in a group with other people that knew that they had autism but hadn't been diagnosed. And you know, as an adult, I don't think that they would go back and try and find out if this was for this person or not. Usually people with Asperger's or autism have found it and they're like, oh, that's me. And so they've just learned to share and do a lot of things. But yeah, there was also some stats around how many prisoners in the prison population, men prisoners that probably have autism but have been undiagnosed with that. And so they have gotten themselves into trouble for whatever reason, not had the support around them or not been understood very well, and they've ended up in prison. And I think the stats a while ago now was probably around 30% of those prisoners, 30 to 40%. There's still some understanding that we need to do, not just for the children or the young people that we get to hang out with, but I'm pretty sure you guys will all know someone who's quirky, someone who's been quirky in your life, the guy that takes apart TVs and puts them back together again, or just has some differences that they do, and you're like, oh yeah, or someone you went to school with, and you will just recognize that, but you didn't know it at the time. And you know, it's not about feeling bad about what happened in the past, but it's just about acknowledging that and moving forward and saying, maybe before I start thinking this guy's a thief because he takes the light fittings from people's homes, that there's a reason why, and that maybe he just needs some more education around how to do it differently. 1 in 100 people are affected by autism in New Zealand. And when you think about 1 in 100 people, that's quite a lot of people. So for New Zealand, it's about 50,000 people. Whether they have a diagnosis or that's pending or whatever it is, there's actually some research at the moment that is saying that there's a real increase in diagnosing of children with autism, and it's not just about better diagnostic tools. They don't know why that is, but there does seem to be an increase in what that might be. Some people will say it's because of the MMR vaccination. I'm not a fan of that information because that guy was he was proven wrong, but you know, everybody has their own way and choices and thinking around different things. And maybe it's just a sign of the times that, you know, we've got maybe we just all need to learn how to be more understanding. I don't know what it is, but so it is, for New Zealand stats, it's 1 in 100, and it's more likely in boys than girls, and they were saying 4 times more likely in boys than girls, although those stats have been questioned a little bit also, because I think with girls we've just not necessarily always picked it up, because some of the things that girls do around special interests has just been things that girls have always had, and so there's lots of discussion, but for now it's 4 times more likely in boys.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just have just my last question to wrap up the show today is, how has your faith in God helped you through this journey?
I don't think I could have got through this without knowing that I had a Heavenly Father who loved me, and that I was his daughter, and his son was my son, and that it was my job to support him to get through this life. And I think my son has done great with getting through this life. His mother, on the other hand, struggles a little bit at times, but I have a strong faith in my Heavenly Father. And I also I used to have people say, "Oh, what beautiful people your husband and you are for having a child with difference." I used to think, well, what am I supposed to do with this child? I can't give this child back to somebody. He's my child. But I also believe that we're never given anything that we can't do. And I think that we all need to remember and know, and absolutely know, that there is a God and He loves us. We're not punished when we're given different things to do. That's not a punishment, it's an ability for us to grow further and to learn better. And you should always be careful what you pray for, because sometimes it just might come true.
God has blessed me with an absolutely amazing husband. So him and I work very closely together. There have literally been days that in the last 4 years have amounted to weeks of times when I'm just like, how am I going to get through this day? And my simple prayer is, God, help me get through today. That's as simple as my prayers have gotten. And they have always been answered, because I'm still sitting here today. But, you know, I've had to call my husband home from work on multiple occasions because I haven't been able to calm my son down. And, you know, my husband puts us first over everything. And he drops everything and comes to help me when I need him. And so I'm very, very blessed. But my prayers have always been that simple. Help me get through today. Help me get through today. And there have been some pretty dark moments, I'm not going to lie, where I have felt like, how can I continue? How can I keep living like this? And I just feel extremely blessed to know that God is real. He is real, because I am able to learn so much to help my son. And truth be told, he teaches me more than I could possibly teach him. And my husband and I are always joking that we're like holding on to his sweatshirt on the way to heaven, because as much crap as he puts us through, he's going straight there and we have to work harder to get there. So, but yeah, it's just a pretty simple prayer like that. And he never, ever lets me down.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Thank you both for taking the time out to join us on the show today. I know that we have all learned something today, and we've all been educated. And now that we know better, we have to do better. And so my challenge to the viewers who are tuning in to this show or this episode is you too know better, so that now you have to do better, and just be kind to those around you, because you don't know the battles that they may be going through every single day. And we can make it easier on everyone by being kind. being kind is so simple, but sometimes it's very hard to do if we're all about ourselves. Thank you, Therese and Audrey, for being here with us. This is our show, and until then, thank you for tuning into A Righteous Woman. Bye.